What is going on, everyone? This is Zach from Clutch Crew Sports back with another 2022 NFL team season preview video. And today I'm going to be talking about the Denver Broncos. Um, the Broncos are one of these teams that really had one of the biggest off seasons out of all the teams that we talk about. They're the ones that really triggered a bunch of moves that started with other teams' quarterback situations. So obviously I'll talk about Russell Wilson, but there's a lot of other news and information to report on the Broncos this offseason. So let's go ahead and get their offseason reviewed and then take a look at their schedule and how I think their 2022 season will go. So first things first, we have to start with all the new regime that is taking place in Denver. A lot of teams are getting new quarterbacks or new coaches, but they're getting a new quarterback, a new head coach, and a new owner. So they're from top to bottom. This is a completely reshaped Denver Broncos organization. Obviously, ever since Peyton Manning, they've struggled finding that quarterback. They traded a few first-round picks and a bunch of players to get Russell Wilson, which I think ultimately was a good move for him. The Broncos are a team, in my eyes, that had a good supporting cast. They had a good offense. They had a good defense. But they were just a quarterback away from really being taken seriously. Russell Wilson provides, I think, an elite quarterback play for them. I don't think Russ is over. I think just kind of things in Seattle were not going his way. So I think Russ needed to change. Obviously, the Broncos needed to change. I think it's a really, really good pairing. It's kind of funny that Wilson beat the Broncos in his first Super Bowl that he played in. So now he's joining the Broncos, and I do think he ultimately gets a new contract with them, becomes the next highest paid quarterback in the league, and I think he's going to do really good things. This season, I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl, but the Broncos are a team that I would not bet against them winning the Super Bowl in the next 4 to 5 years, let's say. I know the AFC is very stacked, but Russell Wilson's a Super Bowl champion before. I think this is a good team around him, so I'm given a high possibility that they could win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. Alongside him, Nathaniel Hackett's becoming a head coach for him, first-time head coach for him. Obviously, I know him well from his days in Jacksonville. If you'd have told me he was going to be a head coach, I would have thought you were crazy at the time. But, ultimately, looking back on it now, he did have the most success with Blake Bortles that he's ever had. And the Jaguars' offense really, was not good ever since he left. So, obviously, he had something to do with it. He worked really well with Aaron Rodgers. In Green Bay, Rodgers spoke very highly of him. And until the playoffs, really, the Packers had no trouble on offense, even without a bunch of star receivers and running backs. So I think he'll be a decent head coach for him. It's going to be his first year, so obviously there's some learning on the job sort of stuff that he'll do this year as a rookie head coach, but ultimately, it's not the worst thing that the Broncos could have gotten for a head coach, not the worst person that they could have hired. So I think he'll do all right for them. And then the Walton family from Walmart bought the team. It just became official a few days ago. The league meeting had their vote or whatever, and they got formally introduced as the new owner to the team, which I think is a good thing. I think just with the way things were going in Denver, they needed new ownership. That's kind of what I heard from their fans, that the fans are happy that the Waltons are coming in. Obviously, they're coming in as the most wealthy owners, and I believe they're the most wealthy owners out of all the teams in the NFL. So, obviously, deep pockets. They're going to have no problem spending for Russell Wilson, all the salaries and stuff. They're not going to have any problems with that. Obviously, there's a salary cap, so they can't just get everybody they want. But I do think that you know, that extra money is going to be a benefit for the Broncos and just, the overall fan experience as well. Usually when these new owners come in, they like to improve on things for fan experience. So hopefully the Broncos fans get some added benefits with this new ownership, and hopefully, going to games is even better experience than it was before. Now I want to talk about some camp observations. So when I was figuring out what to talk about for the Broncos, I thought, with all the newness, with the new quarterback, the new coach, just kind of want to check in, see how camp is going for them so far. We're starting to get preseason games now. They just played their first preseason week, but some guys on defense that have seemed to have stood out, I'm going to just mention. And obviously, I'm not going to be talking about the former Pro Bowlers or all pros that are on the defense. I'm talking about guys that, only if you're a Broncos fan, a true diehard Broncos fan, you're going to really know about. Or maybe if you're just, a super diehard football fan that follows every player around the league and follows them from college, you might know who I'm talking about. But we'll start with Jonas Griffith, the linebacker here, number 56. He's a young player. I think he's in his third season. In San Francisco, primarily had just a special teams role that he really excelled at, and so Denver actually traded some late round picks to get him, just because they liked him so much on special teams. But now he's becoming an actual defensive player, and from what everybody said, he's been really, really flying around, making a lot of big plays, really impressing people, being like, who is this guy? Jonas Griffith, that's a name to watch now. He did get injured in this preseason game. They expect him to be out 4 to 6 weeks with an elbow injury. So that's kind of actually a setback because, before that, there was a lot of positive talk about him. So, this defense already has a lot of big names on it. Whenever you can add some under-the-radar guys, former special teams players that did really good, that's just something unexpected. Offenses are going to be thinking, I've already got so much to deal with with all the other players that, there's no weaknesses. And Jonas Griffith is a guy that's catching a lot of people's attention. And then the next guy is Baron Browning, who is entering his second year from Ohio State. I remember when he got drafted, I wanted the Jaguars to get him, but he's transitioning more from an inside linebacker to outside linebacker pass rusher. So he's kind of taking on a new position this year, but everybody said really good things about him. Obviously, Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb are the main two pass rushers in Denver, but the Broncos media and the team overall is really, really happy with how Baron Browning's doing. They think they've got depth at, pass rusher. So if he can turn out to be a pretty good depth piece, I think, this defense is already scary. That'll make it even scarier if he ends up. Obviously, it's training camp, We won't really know until the games start how these two players do, but, it is a good thing that they're talking about Baron Browning and Jonas Griffith in this good light, because obviously that's never a bad thing to get some praise for how your training camp is going. So the Broncos are, in my opinion, the toughest team to predict how their season will go. Honestly, I think the Broncos are the toughest team, just because the division they play in, the AFC West, is so stacked. I mean, you have the Chiefs, who have been to like 4 straight AFC Championship games. They have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. The Chiefs are going to be good. The Raiders bringing in Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones. I mean, they certainly got better. They were a playoff team last year. The Chargers were, a tie, a Week 18 tie away from making the playoffs. Justin Herbert's entering his third year. They added defensive players like Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson, so their defense is going to be better probably. Obviously, they have a stacked offense as well. So you look at all these teams, and it's so hard to predict. I think everybody can make a case for each of these teams finishing first or last. This is the first AFC West team that I've covered personally this offseason. I'll be doing the Chiefs a little bit later on as well, but it's just totally up in the air in my opinion. And we'll look at their schedule here in a second, but obviously, they could finish last. Injuries seem to hurt the Broncos a lot. They always seem like one of these teams that is getting bad luck with injuries, and it's already started with Jonas Griffith, but and Randy Gregory also missed the preseason game with an injury as well. But this is why it's so tough. I mean, it is, and I think the odds makers with their over-under kind of just hit the middle, just because, I do think new team, there will be some struggles out the gate, but the NFL kind of gave them an easy schedule to start off with. I don't think they'll win the Super Bowl this year, but like I said before, I think this is a team that definitely could win one the next few years. Their schedule, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Obviously, the NFL, they know what they're doing when they make these schedules. They intentionally, schedule the games this way. Russ is going to Seattle on week 1, Sunday Night Football. His, he just can't leave Seattle. He's back there in week 1. So I think the Broncos will win that game. I think they're a better team than Seattle. Obviously, it's going to be an emotional return. We'll see. I'm just super excited to see that game. Kind of like the Brady Patriots-Buccaneers game from, I think it was last year. Just really cool to see those moments. I think that's that week 1 Sunday Night Football or Monday night, whatever it is. That's going to be a must-see game. Just for the Russell Wilson storyline alone. But then they get the Texans, the 49ers at home. Obviously, then the AFC West part of their schedule starts. But they do get teams like the Jets and the Jaguars in London, all before their bye week. So if this team kind of struggles out the gate, at least they're getting some easier opponents compared to the second half of their schedule. They want to make sure after the bye week that this team, is definitely, Russ knows all the ins and outs of the offense. The receivers have gotten to know him quite well. And then later on, we'll start seeing how they stack up against the contenders in the AFC. They play Tennessee, who was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. You get more division games against the Raiders, Chiefs, and Chargers. You play the Super Bowl champion Rams. You play the Baltimore Ravens, who they're getting everybody back from injury. They had they were also a bad luck injury team last year. So, definitely some winnable games earlier, tougher in the later half of the year. Their over-under is set at 10.5 games. I am going to have to go under on this. I'm going to go 10 wins, 10-7 as their record. Last year, they also were under by half a game, like just what I'm predicting. Their over-under was 7.5. They won 7. So, obviously, this is a team expected to do better than they did in 2021, but I just don't see them getting... But, I could see them getting 12 or 13 wins. I could also see them getting, 7 or 8 just because of their schedule. The division games are going to be so huge when these 4 teams play each other. But I think ultimately 10 wins is a good number for the Broncos. So let us know, guys, in the comments below. If you're a Broncos fan, what do you think about this team? Are there any other under-the-radar players that we should expect to do great things this year? What do you think their record is? How do they finish in the division? How well do you think Russ transitions from Seattle to Denver? Let us know in the comments below. Smash that like button to show some support. And as always, guys, remember, be clutch.